So we have taken on Canvas as our digital learning platform in Chesham Grammar School. We took it on just over 12 months ago, and what I'm going to talk to you about today is what I've learned over the past 12 years and how I think that it can integrate into things like marking policy and pedagogy so that it can be something that integrates into the way that teaching and learning happens, not added on, which is what some colleagues sometimes fear. So I'm a religious studies teacher, and that means that I have the pleasure of teaching nearly everybody in the whole school. And only for sometimes once a week, sometimes even only once a fortnight. And there's an expectation, obviously, that I would look at all of the books and all of the work. And that sometimes means that I can be teaching something like 400, 500 students. Now, I've done a bit of mental back of an envelope arithmetic, and I reckon that if I was to give every student that I teach just 5 minutes time on their marking, then I would be putting an extra 20 hours onto my working week every week. But never mind any preparation time, any pastoral commitments, never mind anything else. That's 20 hours a week onto my working week if I'm going to give those students what I think is actually quite a small bit of my attention, only 5 minutes. Never mind the manual handling issues of carrying all the books around and the logistics of it, etc. So it's a problem, and I've solved this problem by just refusing to take any exercise books home ever again. It's very liberating. And the way that I have done that, in accordance with the school marking policy, is to use some of the features that Canvas has to offer, just to make my life easier. That's the starting point. Of course it isn't. The starting point is the education of the students. But I just don't see necessarily that those things have to be one over here and one over here. We talk about teachers' work-life balance. I'm a union rep as well, and we talk about the need to reduce workload. And then somebody will say, but what about the students? Well, why are these things mutually exclusive? Why can't we just streamline what we do? And that's what I've attempted to do this year. So the obvious place to start is homework. So you can have video clips. I was really interested in this morning's first lecture, actually, on embedding the questions in the video link, so I shall be busily trying to do that when I get back. But flip learning, quizzes, consolidation, keywords, vocabulary. I discovered, looking at how I started to mark using Canvas, that keywords and vocabulary was an area for development. We were able to put that in. We can see now that there's an improvement in keywords and vocabulary amongst our students. So that can be automated. Essays, when they hand in an essay, they can type it, they can photograph it, they can scan it in, and they can get feedback on that without having to hand it in person or on paper. I also, and this is a tension, I think, because we do want to trust our students, especially our A-level students, to do what they're supposed to do and have good learning habits. But the reality is that these learning habits have to be developed. So I do require that when students read a chapter of a book, they just take a photograph of the notes so that I can just monitor that it's happening. I can give them some encouragement, some house points, some rewards, and also I have a good idea that the required reading, the extra reading, is being done. And one of the key focuses in our marking policy, and I'm sure in many of yours as well, is to have feed forward for the students. They need to be able to put into action what has been given to them in the marking and feedback to show that they move their learning on. This is a big thing in our school in terms of the way that we're observed and what SLT are looking for and what our marking policy says. So I need to be able to check that that's happening, and Canvas has given me a way to do that. So here's an example of one of the quizzes that I created. I want to teach a lesson on Plato's Cave. And so before I spend a lesson actually telling the story of Plato's Cave, I want the students to arrive in my classroom already having had a chance to think about it. And the way that I did that was to have, the story here just for comprehension, and they have to put the keywords into the story. So I can be confident from looking at the scores that they got, how confident they are. By the time I come to teach the lesson, I can be confident that that knowledge is there, and we can go on to ask some bigger questions and have a more in-depth discussion. One of the other things I did for the older students, which required very little input from myself, was when coming in to take an A-level subject for the first time, or even indeed between year 12 and year 13, I required the students to take a MOOC, a massive open online course through Coursera. There are other providers, and what they did is they took the course as an introduction to philosophy in this case, and they had to just take a photo or a screenshot of when they completed it. So I know that they have a certain amount of foundational knowledge with which to proceed. Again, minimal impact on me, very big impact on them. Here's another example, just a casual photograph of some notes. I can be happy that the student is organised, that they are writing decent notes and that sort of thing. So I can monitor things. I can give feedback into an essay that's handwritten. Some of the teachers that I've worked with have been very concerned that we're asking students to do things digitally, but we still persist with the written exam at the end of the day. That is something that hopefully will disappear at some point, but it's not showing very many signs of going away just yet. And just on the logistics, just on the hand strength to be able to write for that number of hours, it is a muscle and it does need exercise. So I've no problem at all with students photographing a piece of work, and you can see that I've been able to pinpoint areas in the piece of work and give feedback. And then at the side, I also have the rubric, so they've got the examiner's criteria, and then I can give general feedback as well. So I believe that the student is not getting shortchanged in any way. In fact, I believe that they're getting a lot more than they would if they were getting a handwritten piece of work back from me with the best will in the world. Once you've written the same comment 20 times by hand, then perhaps, nobody's reading it. Maybe they can't read it because it's illegible, because you've been up at 10:30 at night writing with red pen fatigue. So I do think that they're getting a lot, and they can make good use of it. In Classwork, clearly people do expect books to be looked at. Nobody wants to see a book with work in it that never gets seen. It would raise red flags for parents and for SLT and for line managers. So what I do is during the lesson, I have my stamp and my red pen in my hand, and as I circulate, I stamp, correct the odd spelling, say underline this, give the verbal feedback, all of the stuff that you would do. I also sometimes print rubrics out so that the students can see the criteria and discuss it and maybe peer assess in the lesson, so that all of that stuff's going on, okay? I'm not going to just ignore the books. But when I want to mark something which, let's say the whole of year 7 have done a coat of arms, I don't want to take 180 books home to be able to mark all of those one piece of paper. So I require them to photograph it or scan it, in it goes, and I can use the rubric and give some personalised comments and rewards for that. You do have to train the students, however, because sometimes you get things like this which are illegible. It's on the wrong side, you have to download it and turn it around, and it's a bit Star Wars, the angle that it's at as well. So you do have to train the students of your expectations. I've found that that's a very important part of what I've been doing. I'm realistic, I teach religious studies, I love it. Who wouldn't love philosophy, right? But I know that it's not for everybody. So my intention is, as I teach what I consider to be a very important academic subject, I also teach digital skills and peer assessment skills and all of these skills that are going to set them up for life, self-reflection and resilience and perseverance and those kind of characteristics that we would encourage. So yes, very often it starts with simply please take the photograph so that it's legible and the right way up, so that it can be marked. When it comes to data and reporting, I've found Canvas very helpful. This one's empty at the moment because it's just October, but I've already begun to collect some of my learning mastery data. I really like the learning mastery objectives because you can have a range of criteria, so you can say this is completely not meeting the what are they? Expectation, they are nearly meeting it, they are very much meeting it and they're on target, or they're rising above it. And what this enables me to do is mark for effort but also mark for skills. So the one that's got the blobs in at the moment is attitude for learning. So I can see that as I've marked, it accumulates over time. As I have marked, I'm generating this data. So when it comes to reporting, I can quickly see who's falling below my expectations, who's consistently above them, who's meeting, and it just helps me to give a much more data-based, evidence-based report to that individual student. And the brilliant thing about it is that the student can look at it at any time as well. And over the course of the year, I mean, it's a bit small, unfortunately, but I'm going to have things like are they able to show good evaluation? Are they able to show good skills of synthesis? Are they able to show good skills of analysis? And so I will be able to see, and so will they when they log into theirs personally, what is their strength and what is their weakness, and it will help me to give a much better report. I don't know about whether any of you teach large cohorts of year 7s and are required quite early on to give some settling in data, and you've met them maybe 2-3 times, and you've got a load of photographs of kids, and you're like, how can I really say? You know the ones who put their hand up a lot, and you know the ones that are naughty, but that's it, really. So this helps me to get a picture of individuals that I can report accurately and back it up with evidence that I've collected over time.
Are those headings ones that are provided by Canvas?
I've put those in, yeah, so I don't know whether there is a package or anything like that, but I basically used our marking policy, and I just put together a rubric where I used outcomes instead of success criteria, and then whatever I click on the scale, it translates it into a colour. So when this is full, it will have all the different colours of all the different skills. So I'll be able to see if someone's working really hard, but they're just not very good at evaluation yet, and that kind of nuance to it. You also get the grade, which it tells you a lot of information. I'm not having to keep a separate grade book. It all goes in there automatically, which again is very helpful for when I come to do the work, do the reports. And it also gives me a running total, because I've implemented a grading structure to this course. It will keep a running total of the grades that the student's getting over time. So when I come to write the long reports at some point, I can actually say, this is what they did, and they will know as well. So, last year I'd sent a message out to all my year 9 saying, look at your grading. I'm going to write your report next week. If you don't like what you see, you need to re-upload something. And a number of them did, which I thought was really powerful. And that's exactly, the kind of learner that we want to be pushing through our school system. My top tips. So when you are working with a school structure, with policies, and with your SLT, if your SLT aren't behind this, then you're going to, I think, have big problems. Nobody wants to encourage or advocate duplication of work. Yes?
Sorry, for the form as SLT?
School leadership team. So management, the big boss. So we want to avoid any work duplication. The amount of times that I have run CPD sessions and had somebody say to me, so what, we get them to print it out and glue it into their books then? No. Okay, we don't want to do that, and we don't want the teacher to be having to mark the books as well. And I think that as long as the SLT know what you are doing and you can demonstrate what it is, how it looks, how it works, the results you're getting, then there shouldn't be a problem. You certainly shouldn't need to be duplicating the work that you would do. you need to have a clear expectation of the baseline teacher use of Canvas. And in our school, what we've done, and this is led from the top, is that every teacher must put their homework on Canvas. If it isn't on Canvas, controversially, we say the students, they don't have to do it. And if it's not on Canvas by a certain time, then maybe you reset the deadline, maybe you extend the deadline, but you can't hold the students to account for a piece of work that hasn't appeared online, and it's the expectation. And this just means that everyone knows where they stand, and this is enforced from the top. So we do have a baseline standard, and I think that that's really helped ensure that everybody is on board in some way, because you're going to have people who don't really want to get involved with digital learning, and you're going to have people who are very super keen early adopters, like me. So can you tell? The policy does need to reflect the practice. If you're going to have a marking policy that says books will be marked fortnightly and then you suddenly start marking online, then there's a discrepancy. What I did is I sat down with my line manager, I showed him what I was doing, I explained the rationale, I showed the benefits, and then we changed the policy, which says marking is done on Canvas, this is what you can expect, this is where you will find your grades, this is how it works. And so if any inspector was to come to our school and they pick up some books and they don't see the sort of deep marking that you would expect, well, there's a note in the front. It says, this course is marked on Canvas, this is where you'll find your grades, and then if that inspector or SLT member wants to have a look, then it's all there. I'm not in the business of redoing work again. The instructions need to be clear, the feedback needs to be regular, and what I tend to do in my lessons is I will have at some point, either at the beginning or the end of the lesson, just have a look at the leaderboard, have a look at Canvas, have a look at the task, show it from a student view, okay, so that you can say this is where you need to click. The things that students struggle with are yellow starring, orange starring things so they appear on their dashboard. You have to sort of remind them how to do that, because otherwise they're saying, I can't see it, it's not on my dashboard, I didn't know what to do. And the other thing that they forget to do is to enable things onto their calendar. And then they look at the calendar and it's not there. And you just go, oh, you just need to highlight these little tabs and then it will appear. So I spend quite a lot of time just going over the basics so that students know what they're looking for. You could show some good examples. You could just maybe show where to find something if people have struggled with it before. And at Parents' Evening, what I tend to do is I have my laptop right there with me, and I will go to the student's profile and I will talk them through the grading and the list and see what's missing, what's got a tick, what's got a cross, that sort of thing. And sometimes the parents are absolutely delighted because they think it's amazing and they can see how engaged their child is with it. And sometimes the parents look quite irritated at the student because they're like, I didn't know all of this, and now I do know, and now you're going to work. So it's very, very powerful. I do encourage students to be proactive. We're trying to automate, but we're also trying to encourage good learning habits. I'm trying to encourage habits of metacognition. I've just been accepted to UCL to do a doctor in education, and one of the things I want to research is to what extent do students find that when they get this kind of feedback digitally, do they learn to understand how to improve? How much goes in terms of, okay, well, I got a level 4 last time and I read what a level 5 should be, so now I'm going to try and get to a level 5. To what extent does it help that metacognitive process? Which is a question I hope to answer in 6 years' time. So come back. And the biggest thing as well for rolling it out whole school is that, I'm a humanities specialist. But I've had to try and provide CPD for science teachers, for technology teachers, for PE teachers. They all have different needs. And I think that if you're going to roll out CPD for Canvas in your school, you really do need to be aware of that and recognise that, because otherwise there's going to be teachers who just say, well, that's not what we do. That won't work for me. I don't have that. I don't do that. So it will involve, I think, having somebody who's going to sit down with the departments and say, okay, you tell me what you're doing, and let's see if we can work out how we can make it work for you. Because if you just do a booklet and a handout and one CPD session, then, it's just not going to fly. So I'd really recommend taking it down to the department level and making it a conversation. I put this up on the wall in the staff room last year and waited for someone to call me into an office, and nobody did. So I think that it's all right. We need to make it clear, as I've said, and what I have done is I've made this document, I put it in the front of every student's book that I teach to make it absolutely crystal clear what's happening, what to do, where to find it, and what to do if you need help. One of the frustrations last year is I would get students coming in and saying, or even worse, a parent emailing the school office saying, we spent 3 hours last night trying to submit your quiz, and it didn't work, and we're very angry. And, well, don't spend 3 hours. Just try it twice. Change your browser if you need to. Email me, and we'll sort it out. Okay? And never, ever give a behaviour point or a sanction to a student that has contacted me, ever. And I think that they need to know that. Technology sometimes isn't quite right. There's things I'm learning, there's things they're learning. As long as they talk to me, it's okay, but that's absolutely crystal clear right from the start. So I've been trying to link it into the criteria for outstanding teaching and learning, and here are some examples. This is page 2 of a student's piece of work. The bit in green is the bit that he added, and I think there's no doubt that he's taken responsibility for improving his learning here. And if they haven't submitted it handily, you can nudge them. I know the nudge, that sounds brilliant, because at the moment I'm doing it manually, but the nudge sounds very, very good. Challenging homework, I think that what we do is challenging. I think that they're having to work harder. We've got all kinds of ways you can achieve that through quizzes, through stimuli, through having to work collaboratively to unpick something very complicated and put it together as a class. The feedback is clear. I've already, I think, demonstrated that the feedback can be very incisive, and it does have to match up with the school's policy, and I've made sure that that's the case. And so you can see a rubric here in action. All of that information is happening. I don't have to keep typing it in. It's just I click the button and there it is. And likewise, the student goes back in and they add to make those improvements. Parents can be involved as well, as long as, again, as they realise they can be. A lot of them don't know how to find this information, but as long as the school tells the parents where to find this information, then we can look at the grades, we can look at the marks, we can look at what's been late, we can look at the feedback, and this is all live. The parents can look at it at any time. Maybe one day we'll get away from reporting. That would be fun. And as I said, they can look at the particular skills as well, and if they are on the dot, on the little graph, then they're on target. If they're going below the dot, we need to worry. If they're going above the dot, then congratulations. And this is all there all of the time. The badges as well are quite fun, and that can be set up. I really recommend that, as long as the teachers, again, know that if a child comes to you and says, I've just been awarded a 5 house point digital badge by Mrs. Taylor, then they will accept that and not think that they're making it up. So there are things that require sort of communication amongst the staff, but the kids do enjoy receiving these. So, just to summarise and to come to the conclusion, we have given training to every member of staff in the basics so that everyone can meet the school policy criteria of setting work by 4:30 in the afternoon on Canvas. We did workshops where teachers had a menu of options that we would run, different functions, so collaborative documents, rubrics, etc. And then teachers could opt into the ones that they wanted to learn about and try out. And we also, for subject leaders, help them to set up blueprints and to look at the module functions so that everything, like the badges, can flow through that. So there's things that subject leaders needed to know that everybody didn't necessarily need to know, so we made sure that that was made available as well. So I give, I think, better feedback than I used to do when I marked in books. I know students better. We have a dialogue, which we never used to do. I clearly record my grades and the effort that the student is making in a much, much more efficient and clearer way than I ever was able to do. I can quickly follow up on missed work or improvements very, very easily, much, much more easily than I was ever able to do. I can mark a class set of work quickly and conveniently without any manual handling issues, which really shouldn't come into it. By the way, I don't take any books home. That's my overriding message. Thank you.